Do you know what actually happens when the person you spent 30 years building a life with decides they don't want to share a dime of it? The crazy part is that they can legally move $2 billion into a secret South Dakota trust. They can erase your name, and a judge will tell you there is nothing you can do about it. Stay until the end, because I promise you, by the time this is over, you will understand exactly how this hidden American loophole bypasses family court entirely. So, while his wife of 30 years was borrowing money just to pay her lawyers, Ed Bosarge was using that exact trust to buy luxury real estate. He used the trust to buy a London apartment and a French chateau. He bought them for his new 20-something Russian girlfriend. And because the trust paid for it, it was completely untouchable by the Texas divorce court. Everyone assumed that in a community property state, a judge would just freeze his bank accounts. But Ed Bosarge didn't own the money anymore. South Dakota law allowed the managers of his trust to completely erase his wife as a beneficiary, without her signature, without even telling her. We have to go back to the day the money was moved. Ed and Marie Bosarge got married in 1989. They spent the next 30 years building a life together. But more importantly, they built a massive financial empire. Ed was a pioneer in high-frequency trading. He co-founded QuantLab Financial. Together, they amassed a fortune estimated between $2 and $3 billion. We are not just talking about bank accounts. We are talking about multiple mansions, a private island in the Bahamas, super yachts, the stuff we see in series like Succession. They lived in Texas, and Texas is a community property state, which essentially means the law views a marriage as a partnership. What you build together, you own together. If the marriage ends, the assets are split down the middle, 50-50, no BS. So when Ed filed for divorce in Houston in 2017, the math seems simple. Marie assumed she would walk away with her half of the empire they spent 30 years building. She assumed the Texas family court would look at the marital assets, divide them fairly, and let them both move on. But Ed had been doing something quietly in the background for years. He was moving the pieces on the board while she didn't even know they were playing a game. He wasn't hiding cash under a mattress. He wasn't opening a secret offshore account in the Cayman Islands like most of these hidden asset cases go. Much more sophisticated and much more permanent. You know the money is there. You can see the lifestyle. But the paper says something completely different. Marie looked at the paperwork, and the paperwork said that Ed Bosarge, the billionaire, legally owned almost nothing. How does a man with a private island and a fleet of super yachts prove to a judge that he is broke on paper? The obvious assumption is that he lied to the court. Most people think you just hide a bank account and hope the judge doesn't find it. Well, that's what normally happens. But if you do that, you get caught. Ed didn't lie. The irony of this case is Ed was completely legal. He didn't break any law. He didn't hide anything. He simply used a different state's laws. Yeah, I know. Another day, another loophole we find in American family court law. Aren't you guys tired witnessing all this? I mean, how many times do we have to go over this? Well, jokes apart, back to the story. Ed moved the massive wealth they built in Texas into an asset protection trust in South Dakota. An asset protection trust is exactly what it sounds like. It is a legal vault that locks money away from everyone, including creditors, including the government, and including the spouse who helped earn it. Why South Dakota? Because in 1983, South Dakota abolished a complex legal rule. They allowed trusts to exist forever. They quietly became a mini Switzerland right inside the United States. Today, South Dakota shields over $360 billion for the ultra-wealthy. Ed transferred the mansions, the yachts, and the money into these South Dakota trusts. He named himself as a beneficiary, and he named Marie as a beneficiary, so it looked perfectly safe. Marie was still on the paperwork, but these trusts were irrevocable. Once the assets went in, they belonged to the trust, not to Ed. And buried in the rules of these specific trusts was a mechanism called a trust protector. A trust protector is a third party, someone appointed by Ed, and these protectors had immense legal power. They had the authority to change the rules of the trust. They had the authority to quietly remove Marie as a beneficiary, and that is exactly what they did, without her consent, without her knowledge. In 2021, the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists released the Pandora Papers. This massive leak proved that South Dakota is a systemic, fully sanctioned industry designed to hide billions. Ed Bosarge just used the playbook. Like I said, totally legal. Guys, before we move forward, there are millions of stories like this where family court failed someone and only a few ever come to light. If you think your story belongs here, that your story needs to be presented in front of the world, the link in the description. Share your story. Everything you say will be confidential unless you share otherwise. Your story could be someone's savior. When the divorce went to trial, the Texas family court looked at the facts. The judge saw the 30-year marriage. The judge saw the billions of dollars. But the judge also saw the South Dakota trust documents. The ruling was devastating. The Texas judge openly acknowledged that the situation seemed fundamentally unfair to Marie, but his hands were tied. The court ruled it had no jurisdiction over those assets because technically Ed Bosarge did not own them. The trust owned them. Marie was left fighting for a tiny fraction of the estate she helped build. She was forced to borrow money just to keep her legal team fighting.
I have a way to pay my taxes, property taxes, and I'm barely making ends meet.
Meanwhile, Ed retained total control and use of the trust's billions. The trust continued to buy properties. The trust continued to fund his lifestyle. Now, this may seem like a typical normal case, but if you can see the underlying pattern, you see something more than just a husband who managed to hide money from his wife. A crazy fact, nearly 1 in 5 Americans admit to hiding money from their partner. But this wasn't a hidden savings account. This was the complete financial erasure of a 30-year marriage, executed with perfect legality. What does this mean for you? It means that the name on the bank account is not the only thing that matters. You have to watch where the money lives. You have to watch for the quiet restructuring of assets, because the system is not designed to protect what is fair. It is designed to protect what is documented. Again, a quick reminder, if you want to share your story, link in the description. Rest assured, everything is confidential. Nothing here is legal advice. Everything comes from public record. If you are in a case right now, please work with a licensed attorney in your state. Ed Bosarge proved that if you have enough leverage, you can legally rewrite history. But he isn't the only one who learned how to use the system as a weapon. If this case shook you, you need to see what happened to Cassinoff, because she faced a different kind of trap, and the consequences were permanent. The link is on the screen. I will see you in next breakdown.